Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It's January the 7th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And real quickly, I made a couple of changes to the way yesterday I had this backwards from what it is today. That is the way the trading hours are. Notice yesterday the trading hours were blue and the rest of the chart was white. But I like a white background and I'm used to that, so I flip-flopped it. So where the white starts is where the 8:30 open is, and where the white stops is the 2 o'clock p.m. cutoff time that we stop trading. So hopefully that makes sense. I just flip-flopped it because I like trading off the bright, clean white chart. So um, otherwise, it still works the same. A couple of people asked me where they could find the these two indicators that I talked about. They are custom indicators, but I will post them to the website. I don't have time to do it today. I'm a little short on time today. I may even push through this chart lesson real quickly. I've got somewhere I have to be this evening, so I'm going to try to get through here with the regular chart lesson, but I may have to push on a little quicker than normal. We'll just have to see how it goes, but I am a little pressed for time tonight. So um, also, real quickly, one other thing, I get this a lot, and somebody sent me an email tonight, and it made me think about it right before I read it, right before I started the chart lesson, or this afternoon rather. They sent me an email and they asked about the trend lines. They had tried to explain what we do to some other trader or some other friend, and they said you can only draw these trend lines after the fact. And it never fails. Every so once in a blue moon, somebody will come on the YouTube channel and they'll start making comments that you're drawing your trend lines wrong. You can't draw trend lines like that until after the fact, and there's a large school of people that probably really truly believe that. And if that's what they want to believe, let them believe it. But trust me, you can draw these trend lines. It's a skill. It can be taught. It can be learned. And that skill can be honed and improved. I mean, I can glance at the chart and see these things now. That's how good I've gotten at it. And it's very rarely that I'll miss a trend. And I do draw them slightly different. Um, a lot of times I draw them off of the closes rather than the stems. But you will always see my channels fitting nicely, and you can see me draw these channels early on and watch them come into play late in the afternoon. The very same channels. You could draw this trend line right here off those first two swings, and it's just sitting there. And look when it comes into play, way down here after almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So don't, people that tell you that you can't draw these trend lines, if they want to believe that, let them believe it. But there's a lot of little tricks and nuances to it that I've learned over time. If I can't find it off the trend side, I'll go to the other side. That's how I found this one today, because there's a shorter term one up through here, but if you try to draw this one, it was a little harder to find. But if you drew it off the top, these first few swings here, and then drug it down, it fits perfect. And sometimes I will adjust my trend line a little bit if say this overshot, maybe I had it a little bit steeper, um, and it looks like maybe I'd drawn it wrong. I may adjust it just a hair, but very rarely will I even change it once the day goes on. But occasionally, if I'm looking at it and it looks like I maybe missed it just a hair, I'll adjust it. Um, but it's rare that I even have to do that. So if anybody tells you you can't draw these trend lines early on, all you need is those first two swings or the first few bars. Generally, that's all it takes. Occasionally, they're a little harder to draw, but with time and experience and learning the skill and how we do it, you can get to where you can do it pretty well. But anyway, I'm wasting time with that, but I did feel like it was worth mentioning while it was on my mind. But let's back out. You can see today it's just similar to what we've been seeing. We had the big move down. We rallied about 50%. Anytime you get these big moves, watch that 50 to 75% range, because that's where generally if you're going to turn back down, it's going to happen at. And looks like we got maybe 50 to 75, 60% in there somewhere. You can put your fib lines on there if you want to, just to kind of see what that mark is. But that's where you're going to usually see the reversal. If it keeps going through that, we'll probably test the high again. So this was a fairly typical day to what we've been seeing. Coming down, there's a large two-tier trading channel. I got it right off that, but you really needed you really needed the shorter term stuff here in order to trade this properly, or to better trade this, I should say. Maybe not trade it properly, because if you were waiting on this bigger channel, it didn't come back and give you another trade or two till late. It was too late by then. So you needed this shorter term stuff to be able to get by earlier. And there's even shorter term stuff in here than what I have listed. But I really generally don't like those real micro ones unless that's like in here. I usually don't like taking those trades as much. I like to get these key entry points off the main trend lines and then on the retest and so forth, looking for the traps. But anyway, you see that. I'm going to back out, make it a little bigger, and talk about the trades. First trade I saw was just after the 7 o'clock hour. Notice you got a little trend line working down here. It breaks it, pulls back, tries to, and it really confirms this trend line, which you drew off here and drug down. And this is not a perfect signal bar, but it's real close. I mean, it's still a bullish bar, and the reason it couldn't go any lower is a trend line, and it is a failed. It's really a, notice you could treat this like a failed break lower. This one is real close right here. I could almost mark it green. If you want to take that one, it is kind of an aggressive trade because you got that trend line and you got to be careful. We did push through the EMA there. So I didn't like it, but when it broke and tried to go lower again and the trend line held and it turned up, I liked going long there. And so that's a nice trade. And look how quickly it trapped people to the low side, but it's a failed break lower as well. It's a second entry long counting off the low. It's really a second entry long counting off the high too, because look, you're moving down. That's your first break. You pull back and then it goes higher again. So it's a second entry long no matter where you count it from, whether off the top or the bottom. Plus you got that little failed break lower there below that. This is a little support area across here. And so you really didn't even need this trend line yet, but you should have drawn it then off of that. And that turns out to be a nice trade. And then we touch the top and we start working down, and you almost get a repeat pattern here. It's almost the same deal all over again. And it's not a second entry long off counting from the high, but notice you got the little channel working down. You get the break, it comes back, it touches the trend line, it fails and goes higher. And you've also got the support across there again. So it's basically one of those repeat patterns. I like it. Look at it take off again. This is your key entry point right now. So that's the one you got to be looking for. And we're working higher. We pull back. There's a second entry long right there, but we're just coming off the EMA. We're not back to the trend line. But when it tries to go lower again and you get that fail, notice we made a new low there. You pull back, you get a first entry short. You pull back, you get a second entry short. Look how bearish that bar is. But you don't want to be looking for shorts yet. And so you got them trapped. Ride that thing onto the top. Another good move. And then, of course, you're working back again. This one is real tempting. And you can see here, you don't have a break of that trend line yet. That's the only thing really to keep you out of that. And that trade is still very tempting because it's right off the key entry point. And it's a second entry long counting off this side. It's a double bottom. But notice, notice that you don't have that break of the trend line. Notice you are getting closes below the EMA too. So you got to be careful because we may get a break here. Just in case. If you did go long, when it turns down here, you want to reverse. But when it broke higher there and trapped people, you got to be careful about shorts so far. But this is a nice long trap. And you probably trapped a few here and probably trapped more there. I had a little interruption there. But anyway, this one was tricky. So if you got trapped there, because it is very tempting to go long, the only clue is that trend line. You got to be careful about that, waiting on that break. And And you notice here, both of these you had the break. You didn't get a new low, but the reason is because of the trend line there. And here, um, you don't ever get a close outside of it, and it just keeps going. So this trend line is still holding, working down. And for that reason, I like, and there's a long trap there. It's really a double trap to the long side, so I like going short right there. Um, you're probably only going to get a scalp out of it, but you never know when you're going to catch one that does this and you write, oops, didn't mean to do that. And you can write it down all day because that'll happen sometimes. You won't get a retest. But generally on a move like this, you're going to get a retest. So um, then now we start working higher. This one was tempting even here, but again, notice you don't have the break yet. And we finally get the break. It tries to come back and test the low, but it can't do it. There's too much buying going on. And then you get you pretty much got your trend line right there, and you really could have almost gone long there, but it's the first entry. So I like waiting on this second entry right here, and then you've pretty much confirmed your trend line working up right there. This just reconfirms it, gives you another touch of it. Big bullish bar. You might have considered it's right there at that double top and is pretty close to the high of the day. It's really a trap. You could almost treat this like a failed second entry short, even though this one a tick lower. You went short, and then you come up, you went short, and notice how it pushes through the EMA, comes back, tests it, and turns up. It turns up right off the trend line. That's a horrible signal bar, though, so you really need to wait on this one. And it's a fairly large bar, so you might have missed this one. I like trying to get in this one with a limit order, but it wouldn't have got filled unless you just maybe a tick into it, and it's gone. So you just didn't really get much opportunity there. And then you're working up. You get a pullback, first entry, pullback. Notice the new high, pullback, first entry, pullback, second entry. Look at that bullish bar. You do get a break here, but you got enough room to try to get out before you get to that high. This one just shoots on up and goes higher. But notice you got a break, and now you got a new high in place. It's notice that new high, then it just makes one or two ticks higher, then it pulls back, and then makes a lower high. That's a reversal. That looks like a start of a reversal type pattern. But you got to let it play out, because this also looks like the start of a reversal pattern. This one looks more congestive than this one. This is not really a lower. It's a little bit lower high than this one. But they do look very similar, and so you really can't go short here yet. That's a nice bearish bar. There's almost enough room. There may be enough room in there to scalp out. So if you want to be real aggressive, you might take that one. But I really think you're better off. And then guess what? It pushes through the EMA, pulls back, tests it, gives you that failed second entry long. And that's where you want to go short. And when you get a trap, you don't care what the signal bar looks like. It's probably going to look more bullish, because that's the idea, is to trap people to the upper side. And just go short right there, and off it goes. It pulled back here, but you don't want to enter there. It's just congestion, and there's some support across there. And you can see it pulls back, and it just kind of gets hung between this low and the previous support that's kind of acting as resistance across there. And this is just a little trading range. And notice what happens. It fails out the bottom, then works up, fails out the top, and turns down. If this wasn't such a big bar and you could get in closer up here, this would be a great setup. But it's just too big a bar. You just really got to skip it. And then it comes down. It just kind of goes sideways. And you got another little trading range, congestion area. It's, basically I call what I characterize as congestion is it's just a trading range, but it's real small. It's 5 to 10 or 12 bars or so, like this, instead of, anything much bigger than that. It'd just be a trading range. But you get that failed break out there. This is a repeat pattern, and this one you get a little better entry on it. Really, by now your lows are down here, and so you want to enter right there. And then you break out the other side, pull back. You get a breakout, pull back short, and we're probably going to go lower anyway. We traded down into this. That's a bearish reversal type bar. It traded up and then turned down and closed on its very low. Just go short there, and you get another breakout pullback test of that. Um, you really could almost treat this like a failed second entry long if you so choose. So this one probably should be green, and it would be borderline red just because it's a trap. It's not really a failed second entry short. So because it did get it at least 4 ticks. So I'm going to leave that one green because I don't like the signal bar on it. Even though you could treat it like a failed second entry long, it's not. There's some reasons to be concerned about it because this was a trading range and we're pulling back to test it. We could get a little trap and make another leg up, but it just takes off. And the real entry, you wanted to enter in one of these to get in this one. And really, even if you entered here, you didn't catch a runner because it came back and stopped you out. This market is just very efficient, and that's the only thing. You miss out on this really big move unless you got in somewhere up here, and we're still holding on. And you hate that, but you can't enter here because it's at the very low of this move, way away from the EMA. Even though it keeps going, you can't enter in here. But you draw this trend line. This is one of those times I'm talking about how you can find another way to draw your trend line. You draw it off this low down here, and then you drag it up, and it fits right across. You could have found it off those first few bars, but if you draw it like that, then it comes back, and look at that big bearish bar right off of it. I like that one, and this was a strong move down, and you should have had this larger trend line here, and if you drag it all the way down here, you've been checking each one, so each one you want to move it down to the next one. This is actually just a little lower here. This one may even be just a tad lower. But then you move this equal distance down, and you figure that's probably where we're heading. But regardless, this is off the trend line. Big bearish bar. It's a first entry, but look, this is a real strong sell-off, so if you don't take first entries, a lot of times you won't get a chance. So I like that one. It's tempting here. This looks like a failed second entry long because you could almost, this is a double top really. It didn't quite get up there, but you could treat it like that. And if you do, this is a failed second entry long. But you got to go short at the very low down here of this whole move. I don't think it's the low of the day at the point, but it doesn't matter. You know, you're trying to get short at the, going short at the very low of this whole move down, and that's dangerous, very dangerous. So because you could end up like this or this and get trapped, and so I don't think you really want to take that. And then you get your break here of this channel, and notice you got this shorter term trend line working up. You get a close outside, a move to a new high, and then it sells off. You really could have gone short here, but I wasn't crazy about that one. It did go higher first and turn and go out the other side. I'm going to go ahead and mark it. I probably should have. But I really contemplated over it. It's not a perfect setup. We do have the break in the new high, and we are expecting a retest of the low. But I would have liked to have seen something a little better than that. You could argue for a little bit of support right across there too. But then when it comes back and makes a double top, but notice the new low, pull back first entry, pull back second entry. So you get a second entry, a nice bearish bar. I like going short there. And it pulls back, and now you've got a double test of this area, triple top. This is a double bottom, so you could count this as a new low as well. So it's a second entry as well, counting from this side. So there's a lot of reasons to like that one. I didn't have my line on there. Well, and you can see that resistance across there, and it actually breaks just a little higher there. closes a little higher and then turns down. So I like that one. And we actually get our new low here on this trend line, and then guess what? We reverse. I didn't really see any other trades past that point before we got into the 2 o'clock hour. I mean, this just took off and went straight up. You might have considered, and this is why we don't like to go short right here into these new lows, because a lot of times they fail. And look what happened when it failed. Everybody had to exit. That's why that rushed up there. They trapped people getting short at the low, and they also scared out all the people that had been getting short all the way down, and they started exiting because they don't want to give back their profits. And you can see that's a little failed break lower below that across there, and it reverses instantly. And that's why we don't take those trades. And if there hadn't have been all that congestion and dojis across there, I would say when it broke higher and just went lower, you might consider going short there. You can argue that there's a close outside on this one right here and a new high, but it's not 100% obvious. If you draw it off those first two bars using the close there, it seems to fit pretty well, and you can see that there. And we do get a very small close outside and then a rush to a new high. But that was pretty much it for the day. And lots of movement lately, lots of big moves. If you can catch some runners on these, you only need one or two trades to really do well. But that's really going to be it for today. I'm going to try to wrap it up and get out of here. I've got to get home, so I've got another commitment tonight that I got to take care of, family commitment. So I'm going to wrap it up for the day. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.